So I quit the job. I went all in on this community. I had a podcast, still do, called Tribe of Millionaires that I was running as well. And with a runway, a little bit of passive income, and a dream, I guess, I said, I'm going to take this shot. And what's the worst that happens? And I remember a moment where I was like, all right, so if it doesn't work, I'm going to have to go back and get a job doing what I'm doing right now. That is the worst case scenario. So in essence, my current life is the worst case scenario. So it can't get any worse than that. So why not take the leap?
Well, welcome back to this week's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. I am your host, founder of Lady Landlord, Becky Nova, and today we have joining me, Jamie Gruber. Jamie, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Good. First question I have to ask you, this is a loaded question because I know the answer to it, but Jamie, what country are you in as we are recording today?
I think I'm about 5 to 10 miles south of you in the Dominican Republic, Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, closer to the airport than you, but same country, not too far away.
Yes. For all of my lady listeners out there, Jamie here is like the go-to for moving abroad, moving family, being down here in the Dominican Republic. Jamie, I don't even think you know this, but how I found you was my husband all day long finds things on Instagram that he thinks is interesting, funny, or applicable to our marriage. And he likes to send those videos over to me. And for quite some time, we were actually sending your videos back between the two of us,
Wow.
just highlighting different stories. And then we were like, we should probably say hi to this guy since he's in our neighborhood. And I think we actually both DM'd you on the exact same day, even. But now knowing that you're down here in DR, I'd love if you could just give a quick little introduction of yourself to our guest today.
Yeah. So I spent 21 years in corporate America at a company called Progressive Insurance. Most know it. Climbing from low-level claims adjuster to supervisor to manager, and eventually to an executive position. So made a few $100,000 a year, equity, bonus, corner office, the whole nine. But about 17 years into that 21-year journey, it's something kind of felt like it was disconnected for me. And I started to explore alternatives, options, just because I don't know, I couldn't imagine being able to quit. Wife, kids at home, my wife doesn't work. But I thought, I got to at least try. Real estate made sense. It was practical. You could see the path, rich dad, poor dad, all the things. So I started going down that path. We burned a couple of duplexes and it was like, that's a lot of work. Let's go to the multifamily side, and bought a couple of multifamily and really went down that path. But along the way, even with real estate, like I love what real estate does and I'm still involved in it today. But the business of real estate for me was less inspiring. It was like, that feels like more of a job. I don't like this job. I don't want that job either. But what was really interesting was I had built like a networking community within the multifamily space. It got a lot of publicity, like you, Bigger Pockets alum. I was on episode 432 or 6 or something like that. And the episode was about how to network in real estate. It wasn't even about buying real estate. It was like how to network in real estate. So I kind of got a bit of a brand around networking and connecting and all of that stuff. And that was great. But after a while, even that was like, all right, I don't know how many more times I can have a conversation about cost segregation or whatever, like, oh, NOI, So I really enjoyed the topics when they turned to mindset, goal setting, those sort of personal development principles. And so I sort of took a step from being multifamily networking guy to more broad, I guess, personal development guy. And along the way, I opened a community. I started a membership, and that community gave me a lot of fulfillment. And I wasn't really making any money on it. But at a certain point, this was 3 years ago, almost to the day as we're recording this. So April of 2021, I just decided I'm going to quit. So I quit the job. I went all in on this community. I had a podcast, still do, called Tribe of Millionaires that I was running as well. And with a runway, a little bit of passive income, and a dream, I guess, I said, I'm going to take this shot. And what's the worst that happens? And I remember a moment where I was like, all right, so if it doesn't work, I'm going to have to go back and get a job doing what I'm doing right now. That is the worst case scenario. So in essence, my current life is the worst case scenario. So it can't get any worse than that. So why not take the leap? So that was the decision. So flash forward a year after I quit and realized I wasn't going to go broke. We had a vision, a dream of living somewhere in the world or traveling for a few months with my family anywhere in the world. And we came down here to DR after COVID, or maybe during the end of COVID, I should say, for a month. And we're like, wow, maybe we just move here. So that was January 2022. August of 2022, we made the move down and we've been here ever since.
We have so much in there. We're going to unpack that. First off, I want to say that I love what you were saying about that idea of kind of worst case scenario was where you actually already were.
Yeah.
When I quit my professional career and ended up moving over to Europe, I had the exact same thing. People were like, oh, but that's nuts. How are you going to do this? Or how are you going to do that? And I was like, listen, I'm already unhappy now. So worst case is I continue to be unhappy. All it can do is possibly give me the chance to be better. It wasn't something that was going to make me feel any worse than I already did. So why not kind of go for it? So I think that's really interesting in that same kind of thought process that I did and kind of going for it. But back to professional career. You worked in insurance.
Yeah.
Did you always want to work in insurance?
Oh, yeah. Grew up with a desire heavily to be in the insurance world. That was my childhood dream. No, like we all do. When I was a teenager, my career choice, everybody knew me like, oh, he's going to be a sportscaster. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go call NFL
Oh,
games. I had a little radio show in my town. I went to college, doing some college radio or whatever. I didn't finish college. So that was an experiment that I didn't want to really finish off. But along the way, it was like I wanted the NFL booth. I wanted to be in the booth like right away. I didn't want to do all the work to get there. I think when you have a goal big enough, like all the grind along the way is also meaningful and impactful to you. And it just wasn't. I didn't want to go to Iowa and run the 2 to 5 a.m. classical music radio show in Des Moines or whatever in order to build my way up to one day maybe being in this NFL booth. So I didn't have a desire to do the work. And I gave up on the dream. So at 21, I became a claims adjuster with an insurance company. And yeah, it was the first sort of separation from the core of who I am when I made that move. But I made good money. I was good at it. It was fun. I did well with the company. And I just sort of, all right, I can make a nice living doing this. And, at 23, 24, 25, I'm still fairly close to who I am, just kind of deviating a little more each year. So by mid late 30s, many of us, I think, have that epiphany of like, how did I get so far away from 16 me or 12-year-old me
yeah.
from forever? Like I'm so far away from it. How did that happen? And I think that's what creates a lot of people, what they call a midlife crisis is that you
Yeah.
crash and realize the gap between your true center and wherever the hell you deviated to in many, many cases is just so wide that you just break. You just collapse under the weight of it. That's what happened to me.
What did that 16, 20-year-old Jamie, what was he looking for? What was that vision of the world supposed to look like?
I think if I look back now, so NFL sportscaster was the thing, but really what I enjoyed, what I still enjoy to this day is I love being able to leverage the art of communication. I love being able to tell
Yeah.
stories. So when I think about NFL broadcaster, it was the idea that I could be the one to explain with passion and energy to this audience what's happening on the field. You ever go to a football game? It's boring,
Yeah.
if you will, because you don't have this
Not really my
person.
sport. So yeah.
I love football, but still, you can feel that missing. Like there's nobody calling this game for me, right? Like there's no one giving me a little bit of perspective, the color commentator and all of that stuff. So I wanted to tell stories. The medium at the time was radio and broadcasting, and it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't speak to me. So my journey took me to that later with podcasting and personal brand and all of that good stuff. Comedy was a dream, keynote speaking, all of that were like little dreams back then because I
Gotcha.
I I enjoyed that, and I admired people who had the balls to get up on a stage or whatever and try to share something funny with other people, whether they laugh or not, or get up there and put together something that just inspires the heck out of folks. So I think that was overall what I was really looking for, and I just saw NFL booth as the medium.
Okay. But gotcha. But I'm hearing definitely sharing, inspiring, being able to really build community, bring people together was something that kind of younger Jamie was looking for. And
100%.
now all of a sudden, mid 30s, what did that space look like?
As far as getting into how I came back to it or how I kind of I re-arrived at it.
Yeah, you said that you felt that later on in life and working in corporate America, you kind of realized that you gotten very far off that mark. So that
Oh, no
I'm
way.
looking for like, what was that deviation? What did all of a sudden when you had this decision, this turning point of saying, hey, I need to do something about this because I am way
Yeah.
off my target.
It
What
was a
did life
promotion.
look like at that point in time?
Promotion to my dream job and a move to Michigan. That was the facilitation of it. So if you look at and many people have this in the arc of a career in corporate America, you start out fast sometimes. I did. I was boom, promoted. And it was awesome. I was young. I was the youngest this and the youngest that and all that stuff. And then I kind of settled in for a number of years. I eventually moved to Boston for like a slight promotion, kind of the same job, a little bigger. And it was good. But then that was like, wow, you know what? I think I want to be an executive. Like that's the thing. Like something just felt like I was incomplete for me, even back as early as 28, 29. Like my potential wasn't being reached. I knew that in and of
Right.
itself. So the promotion to executive was the thing. That's what I told myself. That's where the equity is, the bonuses. You got the big organization. You're not like line level dealing with people, customers, and all that. You're more strategy. Like it just sounded so sexy to me. So I sold out for 8 years, going after every job laterally because companies do that to you. Oh, well, you're not ready for that job, but go do this job over here where you're going to be on a plane 45 weeks a year, even though your
Oh,
wife just had her first child, your first child. Go do that for a year and get that experience. No problem. I'll go do it. Nobody else would. Okay, cool. That's great. Now you're still not ready. Go take this department laterally that we don't know if we're going to keep in 6 months. Oh, okay. Well, what happens to me if you don't keep the department? We'll see. We'll see. We don't know. Okay, sure. I'll go do it, and made something of that department, right? So all these
Right.
things that I'm doing and head down, blinders on, like I know why I'm not fulfilled. I'm not at the level I'm destined to be at. Once I get there, man, that's going to be it. So 2017 rolls around and I get the promotion and I move to Michigan. And 30 days later, everything felt completely off. I always say like that was the moment where my inner self or my authentic self finally rose up and battled my ego because everything was driving on ego. I can get this
Right.
job, I can get this level, I can make this money. So authenticity came up and said, "Hey man, look, we did everything ego that you said we should do and look at him, he's miserable." So an epic battle ensued, which was a year of depression and sleepless nights and not being present for my family and all of that. And out of all of that mess came this idea, starting with real estate that I described at the jump. So it was the promotion that was the absolute tipping point, with a little bit of pepper on it, if you will, of having a really bad boss. So those two things together kind of did it for me.
Moved to Michigan.
Michigan was actually cool. I'll be honest. Like I know
Yeah.
it's gray in winter, but we moved there like, hey, it's for the job. Like whatever. It's
Right.
bad water and crime. But honestly, like we fell in love with where we were. We were amazed by what's available there. But it's funny. That's the one thing I thought would be the bad part. That was the good part. The job that I thought would be amazing
Interesting.
and all of that. That was the bad part. But it was what I needed at that time.
Well, the difference between there and then New York would be that we have good water, but crime. So it's it's not actually all too different
That's true.
when you really think about that. But so, and that's also a big kind of familial change, also to move now to another state and kind of start over from that perspective. What was that moment then when you decided after going through that, saying, "Hey, I'm tired of this bad water. I'm tired of this boss." This promotion, my inner self was really kind of realized that it should win over the ego.
Yeah.
What did you decide to do at that point in time? How were you going to rectify that?
The big move at that point, so I was looking for the way to act my way out of it. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad, real estate, all of that was the acting out of it. Like, okay, I could sort of like grab onto this lifeline. This thing is interesting. I get excited about it. I can numb myself from the pain of my day job with this real estate dream, if you will. And then shortly after, I would start going to RIA meetings, real estate meetups, and all of that. And that's where I learned, like, wow, I really enjoy being around these kinds of folks. So you start listening to Bigger Pockets. You hear about this GoBundance community that Brandon Turner and David Green kept talking about, or actually Josh Dorkin back then. I'm like, what is this thing? So what I learned about masterminds in general at that point was, wow, all right, so this is a compilation of people around a shared set of values that are there, and there's structure and organization to it. You just got to put your money into it. I'm like, wow, I have more money than time right now. Trying to build a real estate thing. I got a family. I have this job. I make a good living. More money than time. So to me, I'm going to drop my money on this community where all the people apparently that I want to know are in, and joining GoBundance, joining a mastermind at that point, that was the real game changer. All this other stuff I was doing on my own, but once I overlaid that with a community of people that held me accountable to who I said I was going to become, that
Mhm.
was the up and to the right moment, the beginning of it.
Because so many people get stuck on that. So many other people will stay there on that island by themselves and be like, no, this will get figured out. My boss will retire. My boss will leave. I'll eventually
Right.
become happy. I worked so many years for this executive role. I can't tell people that I'm not really happy. That's a big occasion in your life to be able to say, hey, I now need some outside support on this. Let me now look at the mastermind. Let me take that leap. Was that something that you had reservation saying, great, I'm now just going to pay a whole bunch of money, join a mastermind, and hope this actually changes my life? Or
Not
was
by
it
that
back to
point.
that same situation of, well, I know I'm not happy now, so I got to do something?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. There was actually no hesitation in paying for it. And it's funny you say that. I used to say, I think I can outlast her about my boss. I think I can
Yeah.
outlast her. She's a decade or more older than me. She's going to go at some point. I can outlast her. When I joined, no, I think the key step before that is action. I always ask people that are stuck in situations like this where they're, and typically it's 35, 38, 40, 42 years old, maybe a little older, a little younger. The question I always ask is they're like, okay, hey, I've got this job. Your story resonates, Jamie. I make 250, 300, 800, whatever it is. I make all this money, but I don't know what I would do. Yeah, I just don't know what I would do. Like I've been studying real estate, but like, what's the right one? This might not be the right market or whatever. I don't know what I would do. Amazon store, Cody Sanchez says buy businesses, whatever people say. But I always ask people, all right, well, what do you like doing? And they
Hmm.
always pause. They always pause. And then I say to them, you're not asking yourself what I just asked you. They're like, what do you mean? I said, well, I asked you, what do you love doing? What you're asking yourself is, what do I love doing that I could see making money from? Like, I didn't ask that question. So what do you love doing? I think we're in an era, especially now, as a quick aside, where real estate businesses, these are all hard assets. Brand and community are an equal hard asset. And if you look at when Gary Vee built his brand, when Grant Cardone built their brand, it was through the 08, 09 recession, right? They doubled down on building reputation through the medium that's available to us today, social, podcast, all of these, we're so interconnected. So anybody that's sitting there going like, I don't know what I would do that would make money. Well, take it a step down. What do you do? I like flying kites. Great. Go find the community of people that fly kites. Get to know them, dig in, understand them, learn, grow, just love it. And from that in time, who knows what comes from that? Do you become in that community the expert on kite making? Are you somebody that can create, trips, adventures that pay you 40 grand at profit 4 times a year? You're making $150,000, $160,000 a year, organizing these really cool kite trips that you would go on anyway. Like, this really happens. People really do this. So I think step one, before you say, I'm going to join a mastermind, or I'm going to buy that course to learn how to do X, is what do you love doing? Go do that. Give yourself something that you can anchor into on the side that's not your job, that you could see, I don't know, just enjoying for a while. And as you start to build and grow and say, wow, if I could spend more of my time here, if there was a way to make money here, after you understand that space that you're in, then look for the mastermind, then look for something to pay for. But to try to pay somebody, maybe a coach, but beyond a coach, try to pay somebody to help you get out of your own mind in that regard. I say just take action, do something you like, whether it has potential for money visibly right in front of you or not. Just do something.
And the idea of actually doing something that you enjoy is so important. As someone that runs a community for women, we have a lot of people that either have kids, have little ones at home, they're juggling jobs on the side. They have a lot of different components. I can't tell you how often they're like, oh, but I listened to a podcast and it told me that I should go fly out of state, buy a burnt down building, and then just be a project manager on everything. And I'm like, how is that going to work with your lifestyle? And they're like, well, that's going to be miserable. And I'm like, well, then I don't think we should do that. Right. There are so many different options. I actually love the kite example because that was just so random.
Well, let me
Right?
give you 2 more real quick. There's a guy, I forget where he lives, who has 2 dogs, and he just loves like making his dogs talk to each other. He's got a channel on YouTube that's one of the most followed in the world called Hammy and Olivia. Olivia actually just died. My kids watch it. Dude makes a killing making his dogs talk to each other in 40-second snippets. There's a lady in South Africa, Christina something, I forget her name. She's just got this ability to like flex her face and like wiggle her nose really fast and stuff. She makes videos like dancing or making faces to these different songs, and she's making a killing. Like, what do you love doing? I like making funny faces. How's that going to get me paid? That's how.
And that was actually a Jim Carrey joke
Yeah, he
about
says it, right? Yeah.
right. He
So
wanted to figure out a way to make funny faces and make money out of it. So
it is that
there you
simple,
go.
though. Kites, funny faces, making your dogs talk to each other. I mean, it's anything. Like, just what do I like doing? Here's another one. Evan Carmichael. I don't know if you know Evan Carmichael or not, but Evan Carmichael is a big time YouTuber, one of the OG YouTubers. He has not little, but he doesn't have a lot of original content, but he watches stuff all the time. He watches YouTube all the time. Anybody else? I do. I overindulge on social media. I know I do. But he takes that, he packages it and sort of DJs it back out to the world with
Mhm.
compilations or whatever, not even him in it. He's making millions of dollars a year, not only on his YouTube channel, but his associated masterminds and other communities. Like, he's consuming content. That's what he
Right.
likes doing. And he figured out a way by doing so to make a business out of it. But first, he had to do the thing he loves, consume content. So go do
Right.
something. That's what I always say first.
Is that something that you felt that the mastermind that you then joined helped you think about at that point in time when you were saying like, hey, I realize what does not make me happy, what I do not like is being this exec under this boss I don't have
Not
control
only
over.
that, yes, and it also got me, and even now, I have a lot of the guys in this mastermind have a real estate focus. They're heavy real estate focus. So when I get on my accountability calls with the same guys I've been talking to every week for the last 5 years, and the discussion, the wins, challenges, or whatever's around real estate, I've found myself trying to shoehorn in the stuff I do in real estate, which is like tertiary to everything else that I do, just to be relevant in that room. And they're like, stop. you're not the real estate guy, man. Like, yeah, you know what you're doing. You understand it. You invest. I get it. But like your passion is around community. It's around brand. It's around, what you're doing down in DR. Like that's where your passion is. So yeah, they give me permission to be who I say I'm going to be. Better said, I always say that we have great remember when friends surrounding us, all of us, people that
Yeah.
know us for who we've been. So whenever we try to deviate from the norm, remember when friends drag us back out of a fear of safety for us. Oh, you can't quit that job. You're going to lose money. What about your kids? But I needed imagine when friends. They don't care who I've been. It doesn't matter to them. The moment I deviate from the version of me I told them I'm going to become, that's when they
Mhm.
step in and push me that way. So remember when friends or family friends, everybody else I've always had, these guys are imagine when friends, and they hold me accountable to the future version of me, not who I am right now.
That's great. We all need more of those in our lives because I'm
Agreed.
sure so many of our ladies listening to this, we all have that friend, that family member that, no, 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 you shouldn't be a landlord. That one time that I rented to Uncle Bob and never got paid. And it's like, no, no, no. Like all of a sudden, their judgments, their situations now get impressed upon you.
Yeah.
So you're in this mastermind. What became that moment when you said, you know what, that's it. I'm quitting this job?
Yeah, I love this. There were 2. I went to an event in Montreal, and I drove back by myself from Montreal to Michigan. It was like 15 hours. And the event that I went to with this community was really sort of like a deep dive on identity. And it just kind of shook me or rocked me. And the date was October 1st, 2018. It was my 40th birthday. So I'm driving back from Montreal to Michigan, and I'm just sort of thinking, and a song comes on my phone called Secrets by One Republic. I don't know. Are you familiar with the song?
No, I'm horrible with music.
This song played for about 6, 7 hours straight. I just let it keep going as my mind was just like decomping everything that just happened at this event that I went to in Montreal. And I don't know, 6, 7 hours into it, I just broke down. My like emotionally, not the car. I pulled over somewhere in like Ohio. I don't even know where I was. And it was this moment where all the words to that song just sort of permeated me. The song says, I need another story, something to get off my chest. My life is kind of boring. There's something that I can't confess. And then it goes into, I'm going to give
Oh,
all
well.
my secrets away. In other words, like, enough. This isn't who I am.
Yeah.
So then that moment was moment 1 of saying, okay, I've just bought into my new identity. I'm not there yet. I don't have the thing that the identity represents, but I think that's step 1 is I am absolutely bought into my new identity. That's who I am, even though I'm not there yet. Who I am right now or what I have right now is not aligned with my identity. That was step 1. That was, again, 2018. The second moment after, again, a couple of years in this mastermind and building things and doing stuff was February 1st, 2021. I'm driving to Florida. A lot of things happen in cars. My family was going to Florida for a month for COVID, during COVID. We were just needed to get out of Michigan. My
Mm.
wife and kids flew. I drove with the dogs and the toys. And after a day of podcasts and phone calls on a 3-day drive, it's all you can do. So my mind was just kind of going. And I was thinking about everything like, all right, what do I need? What do I need to really live? And this is all back of the napkin. I was like, I don't know, 4 grand a month. And for some reason, that didn't include food, health insurance. That was like mortgage, Wi-Fi, cell phone, car insurance, heat and electric. Like
I
for
like
some
that
reason,
food is below
gone.
Wi-Fi these days.
Didn't need. So, well, my logic was if I have connection and I have the ability to interact with people, then I can earn. I know I
Right,
can.
right,
So
right.
that was honestly my logic. But food and vacation and health insurance, all not even in that $4,000 equation, like 4 grand. Then I looked at my portfolio. I had 41 units partnered, and I was like, what can I take? I wasn't taking anything out of it because I had my job. I didn't need to. I just kind of like reserved it. Like, you know what? If I do this, I could take 4 grand. I could take 4 grand out of that. And there you go. I've kind of, okay, well, that's good. What do I have saved? I don't know, 120, $150,000 I had saved. So like, well, that gives me a runway of like at least a year. And then I looked at what I was doing, building real estate and building my membership community. And it was this sort of belief of like, you know what? I think I might be ready to make this jump. 99% of the way there in my mind, 99% of the way to my destination in Florida. I actually, do you know Gino Barbaro, Jake and Gino? Are you familiar with
Mhm.
them?
Yeah,
I was
as a fellow New Yorker, yes.
I was at Gino's house in St. Augustine, left, and about an hour south of that, I was on the way to Hollywood, Florida. I get a call from this guy I worked with in New England years ago. I don't talk to this guy. Not that I don't like him, but like he was a coworker. And it was like a Saturday. I'm like, that's weird that he's calling. So I answer and he goes, hey man, I wanted to give you a call because I know, you were friends with him and close with him and everything. But Paul, guy that was about 5, 6 years older than me, had 2 boys, another executive. And man, he went to the hospital last night with chest pain and never came out. And that moment, I remember looking in the rearview mirror and like seeing Paul. It was just this really like spiritual moment. And it was 99% went to 100% in that moment. Like I'm done. I know that I need to leave. So that was February 1st,
Right.
2021. I came back March 13th, put in my notice, and I was gone April 9th. So that was the second moment.
So there was about a 5, 6 week period of time here where I'm assuming a conversation happened with Sylvia.
The conversation
Right.
honestly happened the next day, and she was good. So all I said was,
Yeah.
I don't want to put this on this trip. Like, there's no hurry. I don't need to quit today. Like, we're here. Let's have our trip. I was, planning a little bit of like, all right, well, there's other income streams I might be able to unlock if I quit. So I started working on that a little bit, like stealing time from my day job. So I took the month to just kind of be. We were there. We were on this trip. I didn't want it to be all about like, you just quit. I got to get this thing taken
Right.
care of, and here's the exit plan and all that. So I did that trip, and then the moment I got back, actually, it's funny. I came back. I went to a mastermind in Tahoe with GoBundance that got back on March 8th, which was a Monday, and then Friday I quit March 13th, or put in my resignation, which was 21 years to the day after I started. Really interesting. So it was just calm, very peaceful, no stress. It was like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'll do it when I get back.
That's great that you had a partner that was so supportive of you kind of coming home and being like, honey, guess what? I know that I'm the one, the breadwinner here. I'm the one that brings in, a good amount of money here. I'm going to leave. I'm done.
Yeah.
It sounds like by that point in time, you clearly had other income coming in. You already had your real estate set up. You already had monies coming in from other income sources. Do you feel like that clearly led to making that decision and that conversation so much easier because
No,
you already had income coming in? What
no.
do you think it was that allowed for that to be such a peaceful conversation?
On my end, it was a 1000% sense of self-certainty that this was the right decision. I believe, and this could get a little woo, I believe that that energy emanates. Like, nobody can deny you when you're that look in your eye. When you're certain, no one. It doesn't matter how conservative or your spouse is or not or whatever. That's one, but that's taking away from my wife. The other part is, this is maybe the Dominican part of her. She grew up here, and she grew up in, what people think the Dominican is. Like, you and I live in
Living
well
tourist
off,
land.
beautiful Dominican, right? Like, my
Right.
house is thousands of square feet in size. Like, we live very well in the
Yes.
Dominican. People assume it's the third world, and there's elements, but my wife grew up more in that third world experience. So for her, it was like, yeah, you're not happy. So what's the worst case? We talked about it. You got to go
Right.
get a job. Like, I can manage a Panera bread for 80 grand. I can't.
Right.
My wife can make a living. She's like, we have to sell our house, downgrade to a 2-bedroom apartment. She's like, I don't care. Without saying it, she was essentially saying, look, material has never been a feature for me up until the age of 12 when she lived here. And even after that, jumping houses, like, there was never, she wants stability. I mean, she's not saying like, whatever, we'll figure it out. I mean, of course, there's a little bit of for her, like, yeah, I want my kids to have a stable life and everything. But for her, she had my certainty. I didn't even bring up the money, to be honest with you. I'm like, we'll be fine. I didn't bring up, I said, I think we'll be fine. But for her, it was more, the worst thing that could happen is we have to downgrade our lifestyle. And that didn't scare her. So I think that was the biggie. Most
Right.
people hold on to, what do they say? You grasp at certainty and fear something else. Tim Ferriss said it. It's a really good quote. I'll have to find it before we hang up.
I was because that's gonna drive me nuts now. So for both of us married to Dominicans,
Yeah.
was there ever a point in time when it became thinking about like another country? I know for my partner, Amelia, since he did grow up in the not touristy section like you and I get to live in, but since he grew up in Santo Domingo in the capital, and that to him, he was just like, he was thinking it was gonna be more of a rough life down here, that he was gonna be going back to the community where he really grew up. Was there ever a point when there was a discussion about maybe moving to a different country? Or was the Dominican Republic just on the top of the list of places that you would go and that was pretty easily solved too?
Yes, there was discussion of a lot of different places. We talked about a lot of different places. We still do. We still talk about at some point doing a period of time around Europe or whatever. The objective, the vision, I should say, that I had was just simply travel 3+ months with my family anywhere in the world. When we made the
Yeah.
Dominican decision, it was, we were here. We watched our kids playing with their cousins in Higüey, which is a city that, about 45 minutes from here.
Yeah.
And they were having so much fun with them, but the only barrier from them really like truly immersing was the language. They didn't have the language skill. And so that's when we were
Uh,
like, oh, wow, how cool would it be to just have them come down here and just fully get immersed? So that was the moment we decided, "Hey, let's do this for a year," we said, and then we've been here past a year. Um, but all of us do that, right? Like, "Oh, I'm gonna stay a year, 6 months," and then it's like, no, I'll stay a little longer." But that was the moment. So yeah, we decided on this because like, you know what? Hey, we have family here, which helps. We have the kids' ability to kind of interact with their cousins. But to be honest with you, to your point, like when I travel, even though we live in, honestly, a neighborhood's safer than any American neighborhood other than maybe some Hollywood Hills or whatever. We live in a
Right.
very safe part of the
Yes.
country, A, and then B, in a very safe neighborhood in that very safe part of the country. My wife still has a little bit of PTSD when I leave and I go back to the States for a few days because she remembers
Interesting.
her Dominican being broken into, people on the street, bottles being thrown, all that stuff. That's how she
Right.
grew up. So for her, it's like there could be crime at any point. Somebody could break in here at any point, just from a childhood memory standpoint. So that does mess with her a little bit. Yeah.
But it's interesting. We could talk about this much more in another conversation on the side. But my first times coming down here, I remember the first time I came to the Dominican Republic and I was in Santo Domingo with my husband. And it was like, okay, day one, we were going to go out. He was going to take me to the colonial zone, right? So go show me all the
Yeah. Yeah.
monuments,
Yeah.
all the museums, everything like that. The place where you have, the German retirees walking around, with their Tivas with like knee socks. And I'm getting ready to kind of walk into the house. And my husband's like, well, you can't, maybe you shouldn't bring your camera. It's not really like safe. We don't want to get stolen. So I was like, okay, take the camera out of my purse. We won't bring that. He locks that up in the safe. And he's like, you know what? Maybe you really shouldn't bring your phone. Like, you can't call anybody anyways. This was back in, 2016. So international phone calling was very different.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I won't bring my phone then. We'll leave that here. He locks it up in the safe. And then I'm like, well, I guess I don't need a purse. If I don't have a phone in it, you're not letting me carry a wallet or keys, and I don't have a camera. Like, what do I need a bag? And I was like, I guess I'll just take my chapstick and okay, I'm ready to go. Because he was just so afraid
Yeah.
of just once again, he was just always expecting no matter where we went, that clearly somebody would be looking to either pickpocket us, rob us, or whatever that may be.
She's always on alert. Yeah.
Right. He's always on alert with things like that. So that's very interesting. They have that both very much in common, even though we are transplanted. Once again, we're in just gated security and all those perks that we really get to have and the places that you and I chose to be.
Yeah.
When you'd clearly been here before,
Oh, yeah.
what was the one thing when you moved to the Dominican Republic that you were like, huh, now that's different?
By the way, it's people choose unhappiness over uncertainty. That's Tim
Oh,
Ferriss's thing. People will choose unhappiness over uncertainty. I love that quote, even though I couldn't remember it.
I see that all day long too.
Yeah. Yeah. I
All
mean,
day.
I did it for a long time. So I'm sorry. The question was, what was one thing that was like, that's interesting after I moved here?
What was the biggest thing, the one thing that like when you first moved here, like full time, that you were just like, wow, now that is different.
Oh, that's such a good question. I remember the first time I ever came here, it was like shotguns at a gas station. Meaning like the guy with the shotgun, like just like using it like a pogo stick or whatever. Like, like that was like, where am I? Oh my God, I'm gonna get shot. Now it's like I don't even I actually feel safe now, knowing that everybody's armed, right? So this is
Right.
weird flip. But moving here, I don't know the first thing. That's a good question. But what's jumping to my mind right now is I'll call it what's interesting is like the process. Like
Mhm.
everything's got a process here. So
Yes.
when you go to a store, like in the States, when you go to a store, the process, there's so much now you're making me think of it. It's the process and the pace. And I'll explain that a different way. So the process is like you go to a store in the States, right? Like you go up to the thing, you tap your credit card, it prints a receipt or it doesn't, you're out, right? It's done.
Right.
Here though, like 18 things are stapled together. They're handing you all these different things, right? Like it's very inefficient, like at checkout, for instance. So that's one of them. We went to a bank locally and haven't done this since like I was 25, but we drove in to do a deposit for somebody else's account. So you drive up to that window, like the lane on the right has that vacuum tube thing. And the lane on the
Uh-huh.
left has a little window that extends out and you put stuff in it. So we put in that basket, the lady extends it, my wife's Dominican ID and the deposit
Mhm.
slip and the money, and then close it. And she's like, oh, you're not her. I'm like, oh, no, she's right here. And she's like, oh, okay, I see her. She's like, you need to switch seats. We're like, all right. So we go to switch seats. And she's like, no. You need to leave, drive back in the right seats, and then come. It was just like you could see her. Or
Right.
we could just
Windows are
quickly
clear.
switch seats, even if you need the camera. Like there she is. She's there, right? But like that process, that was one. And then this is the biggie one, the biggie, like especially at grocery stores. Cashiers, people like they check out. I see Americans now that haven't lived here, like losing their mind at how slow sometimes somebody's going, or God forbid they see somebody in front of them leave the line to go finish shopping. Like
Oh,
I used to be that guy too. Now you just kind of get used to it. But how many times somebody's left the line in front of me to go finish their shopping with their cart there, or the cashier gets up to go get cash or something and like waddles a half a mile an hour, stops and talks to people, 46 people in their line, and they couldn't care less. They'll be
Nope.
back when they're back. That was big for me.
The grocery store is actually it's kind of on my list, but actually for a different reason that you didn't name. The thing that drives me the most crazy at the grocery store is that the bagging guy puts like 1 to 2 items in a bag and then ties it. And I'm like, you see my husband, he's like 6'4" and like 240
Yeah.
pounds. I think he can carry more than a tissue box in one bag. And why do we have to tie it?
Get
Because
home,
you
it's
can't,
like I
you
know.
can't put it on your wrist and carry anything in. But I always tell the guy, I'm like, can you put in more, make them heavy,
Yeah.
double bag them? But I'm saying to being like, I bought 6 items and I have 13 bags.
Yeah.
Why?
I know. But for
Which is also weird.
$2, for $2 US, they'll walk it out to your car and load it in your trunk for you, or even for free, they'll do it. But you tip them
Right.
$2. So that's a nice thing. But I agree. Every time we get home, we have to like unknot these bags. It's like you said, I want to just slide them on my arm and walk out.
Right. So I can carry all 14 of them on my right arm. So I don't
Yeah.
have to make a second trip from the car.
That's a good observation.
So
Yes,
that's-
agreed.
That's the thing at the grocery store that drives me nuts. I have my one guy at the checkout line at the normal grocery store I go to that understands. He's like, there's that crazy American girl that always yells at me and tells me not to tie bags. He
Yeah.
knows I'm coming and he does not tie my bag.
Look at that.
So we've
Yeah.
at least got into that.
I love
But
that.
I love that once again, you really became my guide to kind of finding my way around Punta Cana, finding my way around the Dominican Republic in general.
cool.
Just great general advice about moving abroad and being able to live somewhere else. Now, you mentioned earlier on this conversation, you just kind of threw that in there, like owning 41 properties partnered.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that.
Sure.
What do you mean by that? Talk to me about what you got going on in real estate and how did that supplement your journey, your ability to really live in another country?
More than anything, it was belief that I could do something that wasn't a day job. Again, I mean, we cash flow, but I think the dirty little secret in real estate, and this is my opinion, is, you hear the episodes like, oh, I bought a property, $100 a door, whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, if you're buying value add, it takes a bit, right? It takes a while for you to truly cash flow on property. And then even then, honestly, often it's, no, you build equity and refi. I started in 2005 buying a house in New York when I lived there for me, and then moving to Boston in 2008 and couldn't sell it. So I had this annoying rental property, single family house, 6 hours away from where I lived in Boston. And it sort of lingered. And as long as I didn't have to pay much or anything at all in a year, it's like, whatever, I'll sell it later kind of thing. But then when this whole thing came up, it was like, you know what? I've got that property. I'm going to refi it. I'm going to make it a real asset. I'm going to treat it like an asset. No more, yeah, pay me double next month. None of that. So I really got serious about being a landlord on that single family, bought 2 burrs. So we had 5 units all in upstate New York. Then we moved to Michigan. So in Michigan, like I said, when we bought the 2 burrs, they went okay. The COVID kind of got a little weird in there and everything. But when we got the 2 burrs, the 2 tax bills, the 2 closing documents for 4 units was just so much. So how do I buy a 7 or 8 or 10? And that felt like huge, like an apartment building. How do I do that?
Right.
Found a partner. His name is Ben. We started this multifamily meetup that we did in Michigan. And from that meetup, a person came to us, a couple came to us with a 16-unit property. We bought it for $755,000 between the 4 of us. And then we bought them out 2 years later, a year and a half later, at $1,050,000, I think it was. We refied and bought them out. And then we actually sold that 2 years ago for 1.25, I think it was. So in at 750, 3 or 4 years in, we were out at 1.25, which was great. But I had those 16 units. I had my 5 units back in New York. So that's 21. And then we had a 20 unit in Cleveland with a guy that was part of my multifamily meetup group that I was in. And I was a small partner on that. So I was literally like a sponsor signed on the note essentially. And I took my 10% distribution every month. It was amazing. So that was all of that. But all of that has been sold. I now am a partner in a firm called Quantum Captial. We invest in LA, Denver, Austin. We syndicate. So we'll raise capital for the deals. The lead sponsor, his name is Mark Henteman. Really cool story. He's a 22-year writer for Family Guy, Emmy nominated writer for Family Guy. So I've been to Seth MacFarlane's birthday party. It's really cool. Cool partnership to have.
That's so random.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. Well, here's very quick aside. He was a writer for Letterman, gets fired, feels like writing is so like up and down, moves to LA. He meets Seth MacFarlane. They write the Family Guy together, and he sees the pilot episode and says, no way this gets picked up. No way. There's no way it's getting picked up. So he took his script checks and he bought a duplex in LA, rented out the second half of it to the guy that does the voice for Cleveland, and it like tripled in value in 2 years. And he was like, oh, this is how I can make a lot of money. So Family Guy took off, obviously, and he makes an amazing living doing that. And then he bought like a 12 unit, a 10 unit, and eventually raised money from the other writers. And now he has a syndication business. So I syndicate with him. We have, I think, 10 deals in Denver, one in LA that we're managing currently that are early cycle, we'll say, as far as the total time that we projected to the investors. But most, if not all of my money is essentially tied up on the LP side, the limited partnership side of those deals. And then I have my general partnership stake as well. And I do capital raising, some marketing, that sort of stuff with Quantum. So I've kind of gone from single family duplex to owned small multifamily to now mid-size, older vintage value add multifamily in a syndication model.
What I love in that journey, what I hear when you're kind of talking about all those different steps is diversification.
Yeah.
Right. You decided to kind of mix those things up. You had other assets, you were doing other types of investing, but still were saying, what else can I do within the real estate world? It also sounds like you've learned bones to art, right?
Yeah.
You said you had your single family. You had that one house that since it didn't sell, that you decided to rent it out, then kind of got serious with it, started connecting. And as your education grew, so did your confidence, and you kind of decided to scale up to that next asset class and really kept transferring in and out what those different projects looked like.
Yep.
So I love the fact that just sharing that story in the couple minutes you did, there were so many different things that you touched upon within real estate. To me, that's one of the coolest things about real estate investing is it's not just, hey, I have to go buy a house and go house hack, or I just always have to be a landlord. There are so many different ways that you can get involved in real estate. If you have a lot of money in your pocket, if you don't have a lot of money, if you have a lot of time in your ability in your day, if you don't have a lot of time, there's really something for everybody to get involved in. And then it's so cool to see what connections you make that lead to that next project.
Yeah.
And see where that goes.
By the way, Quantum Captial was all GoBundance. That's Mark Henteman, all the guys. I met them all in GoBundance. So that's another aspect of masterminding. It's funny, you're an OG Bigger Pockets guest. And when I found Bigger Pockets a few years ago or whatever, I remember going back and listening to some of the early episodes. And there was an episode with a guy named Ben Leibovich and Serge Shukat, I think was his name.
Mm-hmm.
Ben was buying like smaller multifamily duplex singles in like Ohio. I think he was thinking about going to Arizona. And Serge was in Arizona doing syndications. And I remember thinking back then, listening to that episode, I almost turned it off. I actually told Ben Leibovich the story because Ben, by saying something in that episode, actually prevented me from just giving up on real estate. When I heard Serge talking about syndication and cap rates and waterfalls, I was like, okay, this is not my game. Nah, this is too complicated. But in that episode, Leibovich goes, hey, I got to stop it right now. People listening to this don't want to be rock stars like Serge Shukat. They want to buy a duplex. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm listening. And I stayed in that episode. Like, there's different ways to do it. So for me, initially, it was like, real estate investing is so big and complex. Leibovich made it clear, like, oh, I can start here with my single family and a couple of duplexes. I don't need to, understand all the ins and outs of a waterfall structure or whatever. And it's funny now looking back that I do understand those structures, that the guy, if I met me from back then and presented me now to him and said, dude, this stuff is easy, he'd be blown away by it. But you learn over time through connection, through education, and sort of elevate through the ranks, if you will, of what real estate's all about.
But I think we can all agree that it's still better to own that one duplex than nothing at all.
So I think in the US, 5% of the population owns rental property. And the average unit count, do you have an idea what the average unit count of real estate investors in the US is? How many units the average investor owns?
My guess would be
1.7. So if you own a duplex, you're an above average real estate investor amongst the 5% of Americans that actually have real estate. A duplex is significant. I hate when people say, I just have a duplex. Like, you're an above average investor. 1.7 units is the average. So I agree
most
with
people out there are not owning, even for myself, like my goal is not to own hundreds of units.
Right.
I want to make a lot of money from it, but I want to own the least amount of property for the most amount of money.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the way that I want to focus. I'm not just sitting here collecting doors. And we've all been to those networking events where everybody just goes around asking people, well, how many doors do you own? As if door count makes a difference to somebody's bottom line in the end of the day.
And that door count is always usually like, I've invested in an LP position in a large apartment building. So I own like a bedroom in one apartment unit if you were to do the math that way, but I'm going to count every unit because I'm in it. Oh, I have 5,000 doors. Like, no, you don't.
Right.
You have like 3, right? You invested 50 grand in amongst $800 million in real estate. Like that's not, you don't
That's
have
so
those doors.
that's so weird. I can't think of anybody coming to mind at all that talks like that or promotes things like that on social media. I
Oh,
can't.
yeah, yeah.
Just nobody is
I
coming
know.
to mind right now.
It's crazy.
But no, I think that's really important to be able to be said. And I'm glad that you brought up that statistic because the small time landlord, small time,
Yeah.
once again, 1.7, we are the majority.
Yes. 100%. Again, yeah, most probably own a single family, right? So like I said, duplex is significant, but yeah, a property, owning one property, only 5% of the US has that. So I think being in the game is, trumps not being in the game 100%.
Right. So I got to ask this question. I know we're almost out of time here, but buying in a foreign country, do you own rental properties here in the Dominican Republic and would you?
Not yet. Yes, I would, but not yet. Remember, we were coming for a year. So everything was like, pause it, right? Like rent our house out. We rented it out in the States, fully furnished to like insurance displaced families. Nice little extra premium, but we pay for the Wi-Fi and the cable and all that, it all stays on. And it was a year. We rented a house down here. And after we passed the year, it really honestly was like one more year. It's just not out of our system yet, But as
Right.
time has gone on now, like literally tomorrow as we talk, we're going to look at some property to buy. And then it's a question of, do we take the equity out of our house? Like, do we sell it in the States and just fully commit? Do we take a home equity line against it to bring it down here? But yes, I would absolutely. I get this question all the time about Airbnb. Is this a good Airbnb spot? And my answer is always like, it doesn't matter. The spot doesn't matter. I mean, to an extent, like be closer to the beach than not. Yeah, you'll probably get better.
Right.
But anybody who's buying here or in any vacation town, Pensacola, Florida, you name it, with the idea of like, oh, I'll just Airbnb it. It's like that to me is a recipe for putting a for sale sign up in 6 months. If you treat it like a business, you understand updating the photos, how to make the listing pop, making sure it stays to the top, having dynamic pricing models in place, and then even the management part, sound recognition in the unit after 10 p.m. Like all of those things. If you treat it like a business, that's way more important than where the unit is. So is this a good Airbnb spot, this villa, this place? Like if you're treating it like a business, then yes. If you're not, you could have it beachfront and you're going to be so frustrated by it, you're going to get rid of it because everybody else has an Airbnb in that beachfront community.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think it's a great market. And I always say, I look at long-term. If your idea is I'm going to buy and be out in a year, it can work. You could buy a pre-construction property, goes up in value before you even take possession of it and you flip it. Sure. But if you're saying, you know what, I'm not going to sell for the next 5-10 years. I think places like Punta Cana, Tulum, other places out there have exponential growth ahead of them. My take.
Right. No, I agree. So in a year from now, am I going to see the Grubers still here in Punta Cana?
Yeah. We're staying. We're going to go back for the summer, kind of get our affairs in order, if you will, and decide what we want to do with that house. But we're paying the school tuition for our kids this month because we get a discount on it or next year already. So yeah, we'll be here.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Jamie, thank you. On that note, then I guess I'll see you at the gym tomorrow morning.
You will.
But yes. But thank you very much. I really appreciate you once again giving your time to our community and so many expats that are really looking to be able to move abroad. So thank you for that from all of us. But otherwise, thank you very much from our Lady Landlord community sharing your story about really being able to leave and ditch that 9 to 5 and go after really your true self. So thank you for sharing that today.
No, this is fun. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow morning. All right, Lady Landlords. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. We release new episodes every single Tuesday. I linked Jamie's info down in the show notes, so make sure to go give him some love over on Instagram and follow him there as well. And as I know you enjoyed today's episode, please do make sure to leave a 5-star review telling us about how much you enjoyed today's episode, as that will help other Lady Landlords be able to find us and also get the support that they need on their real estate investing journey. Thanks so much and see you next Tuesday for the Lady Landlord podcast. Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlord.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.